Women are nothing without men.
Hello everyone, welcome to the first manga alert of 2022. How about that? This is episode 49, which is interesting. It makes us, I believe, the longest running manga podcast of all time. We're here today to discuss a series that all of us hold a series that's very near and dear to all of us.
Let's just get out of the way. No bid, no bid.
Can't even pretend to like it.
It's like it's such an enigma.
So we're talking about Bakuman today. This is a series that I know I had read before. Apollo had read it before. Oh, I guess I should introduce. Oh, whatever. Apollo's here, Shrugs here, Buzz is here. You all know them. Anyway, so Apollo and I had read it before. I just reread it, and I believe Shrug and Buzz have just read it for the first time.
Mm-hmm.
And I did make a whole 30-minute review on it, but it was very hard to get all of my thoughts out due to the spoiler-free nature of my reviews. And there's just so much to get into and so much to talk about. So that's why we all came here today. Apollo, I know you just got out of the hospital after being shot. How was that? How was that experience?
Well, actually, so I think we should go over everything that has happened to me because it's been quite a while.
Well, okay, but this is the Bakuman cast. We can't go on about your life story.
This isn't the Apollo cast.
So in case you guys didn't know, I don't know if I gave everybody the entire details. I was shot in the foot, and now I'm missing my left foot from the ankle down. It's been an interesting journey to learn how to walk again without an actual foot. But we're getting there. We're getting there.
Good job, Apollo. I'm proud of you.
I want a girl who will lie for no one else. When I'm away, she puts some makeup on the shelf.
Alright, so the format of this podcast, because it has been a very long time since we did one on a specific series. When was the last time? Was the last one we did Bleach?
No, I think it was Attack on Titan.
Oh, Attack on Titan.
Oh, right. Yeah, what am I saying?
Bleach was like 3 years ago, wasn't it?
No, that was last year.
Ending so
Was it
bad,
really?
he forgot
It
about
was
the
less than a
episode.
year ago.
Oh my
Because
god.
it was when the series ended.
Yeah.
But that one was mostly just about the ending. This is about like a full series. But what we do is we just sort of do a walkthrough of the series. You know, each arc. Bakuman's is divided into arcs, but also not really. But we'll just go throughout the series. And just a heads up, in case you aren't aware, this is not going to be an overly positive podcast. So if you are a big fan of Bakuman, of which there are many, you might not really be into this. However, we did get a little gift on my Bakuman. I can't remember if it was on my video or somewhere else, but one of the manga listeners told us that Bakuman was the best written manga of all time. And his name's Hudson, he actually sent me a Discord message with an essay actually defending all of the parts of the series that I consider to be poop. So whenever we get to those parts, I'll read out what he has to say, and we can take into account his opinion.
And I can confirm, going back to the last podcast, his comment is one of the top ones, saying, "Happy holidays, you should definitely get me on for the Bakuman podcast, as it's the greatest manga of all time."
Yeah, so this guy, he's a true Bakuman stan, so we'll take his opinion seriously.
He got his wish.
I also just want to confirm with everyone, and Hudson specifically, that if you're over 20 years old and you love Bakuman, you may be a wife beater.
Just a sexist.
That's assuming that he speaks to women.
That's true. That's true.
Or you live in the South.
All right.
But that's racist.
There's also going to be a lot of jokes like this in the podcast, I'm sure. All right, Bakuman. This series came out in 2008, written by the exceptionally talented duo behind Death Note and Platinum End.
Oh yeah, Platinum Man is good shit.
Oh boy, my other favorite mangas of all time.
Okay, right before we get started, I learned this very recently, but did you guys know Takeshi Obata was arrested once?
For what?
So it's so fucking weird. So he was speeding on the highway at like 1 a.m, and he was pulled over,
Okay.
and the cops found he was in possession with a knife.
Is that illegal in Japan?
What was he doing?
I
Why was he speeding somewhere with a knife?
He was going to kill someone.
Trying to get away
this
from Oba.
sentence began and ended.
No, it was because Oba was just on the phone with him and pitched his new manga idea, and Obata was going to stop it. And that manga was, of course, Bakuman.
Truthfully, that sentence really started and ended in two very different places. I was literally gonna be like, oh, maybe he got like arrested for like hitting his wife. That would make sense.
No,
But
he's just the artist, not the writer.
Or the classic manga arrest for other reasons.
I don't think he's a pedophile.
I'll be honest. When I was on his Wikipedia and I first read that he was like got into legal trouble, my heart stopped. I'm like, please no. but
Oh no.
But yeah, and I guess we should also mention about Tsugumi Oba. It's a pen name. We still don't actually know who this guy is. I think it might actually be Obata, but you never know.
You think he writes and
Yeah.
does the art?
I mean, it's possible. I mean, you know.
Obata shows his face, but Oba never has.
Yeah,
so-
we don't know much about him. It's kind of suspicious.
I don't think we know anything about Oba.
Other than he's not a very good writer.
maybe his real name is Akito Takagi.
Oh, burn.
No, it's not.
Okay, so Bakuman's about two teenagers who decide to start writing manga. What did you guys think about the introduction to this series?
You mean the part where this blonde-headed dude targets this other kid with his math notebook and says, "You know what? I'll give it back to you if you write manga with me." You mean that part?
Well, I'm talking about
Sounds
just
like
like
it'd
the
be a really
setup,
good
like
BL.
volume 1, like the whole.
Oh,
Let's write manga. Let's get married. Let's.
you know,
It started out fine, but as
Yeah,
soon as
see-
Azuki got
I
involved,
think the first
yeah.
20 pages was fine.
Now,
And
you see-
then
it was on a good
You
run.
see, I kind of disagree here. I thought the beginning of Bakuman was like way worse than I remembered, just because of how like, I don't know, the dialogue was all just like, oh, I'm such an edgy kid. My uncle
no.
drew manga.
No, it's
Yeah, but
it's
Yeah, it was
that's-
really robotic.
truthfully,
Yeah.
it's more like, oh my gosh, you haven't read Death Note? What's wrong with you?
Oh
Like,
yeah, that too. And they name drop Death Note like 5 pages in.
Yeah, he
And
says,
I-
"What do you think this is, Death Note?" It's like, what?
shameless plug.
Yeah, and then like the way
man.
it plays out with Azuki, and then like all of the weird sexist stuff that happens right away.
No.
Oh gosh,
So-
the line with his mom really sets the tone.
Yeah, like oh my god, like Apollo. Do you remember what we're talking about? Because I know you haven't read the series like as recent as us.
I think I do. I'm
So
following
yeah.
so far.
Basically, like he goes to his parents to ask about it. Well, he goes to his mom, and she's like, "No, this is too much for a high schooler," because she's smart. And
Yeah.
but then she talks to Mashiro's dad, who I don't think we ever actually see in the series.
Yeah, we do.
And
I think we see his face,
oh,
but
No,
like not his eyes.
no, we see him like one time.
Anyway, and then she goes to Mashiro and she's like, "You know what? It's all right. I spoke to your dad, and he said men just have dreams that women will never understand."
Which makes
And,
no fucking sense,
so
first
go-
of all.
So go for, and like it's stuff like that in the series where they just say something like that, and you're just like, "That's actually horrible. What are the consequences going to be?" And then there's just none because it's seen as normal.
So I just want to bring this up because I'm pretty sure Oba is married. I'm just wondering how...
If he's-
not Oba. Yeah, Oba. I just wonder how that relationship is.
Well, maybe we'll figure it out the more we dive into this.
I doubt it.
Then, of course, we get the big romantic hook of the series, which
Oh my
is
God.
like I don't know, man. It's so the whole romance. There's just so much that's wrong with it. It's hard to put into words.
If anybody's watching this podcast right now and you've never read Bakuman, number one, congratulations. Number two, so basically the way that the romance is framed is Mashiro and Azuki like each other a lot. And then Mashiro ends up getting convinced to become a mangaka or a manga artist. He goes to Azuki's house, rings her doorbell, and then panics.
Hold on. It's worth mentioning they both love each other, but they don't actually talk to each other.
Exactly. Like they've literally, and this is literally, never spoken a word to each other except for in passing.
Yeah.
They have only ever looked at each other. It is literally like an arranged marriage without the arrangement.
Actually, they've seen each other, looked at each other, and then looked away immediately.
Yeah, that too.
But anyway, so he rings her doorbell. She comes out. He panics, looks away like a fucking, 13-year-old spoiled kid with
he's 14.
terrible issues. Anyway, close enough. And then he says, I'm going to become a manga artist, and I love you, and I want you to marry me. And then they agree to marry each other, and then they never talk again. Ever.
Yes, this is true. I mean, we'll get into this more as we keep going with the events of the series, but this is really a nothing romance, and the fact that it's the main motivation for Mashiro is not good. It makes things kind of weird and not very enjoyable. Oh my god. And it's just the fucking dialogue. Like, I compared it to Attack of the Clones. I think that's a valid comparison.
I think that's an offense to Attack of the Clones.
Like, I don't know. Like, there's the beginning of Bakuman is just really yeah, it's interesting because it does something like different. That doesn't necessarily mean that it's good. Like the entire the entire romance is like, yeah, I've never seen that before, but I didn't like it. Like, I was like, this is really stupid. And
yeah,
it kind of leads into Bakuman's like biggest problem that I had is like, man, the manga stuff, which like the introduction doesn't do it justice because the introduction is rough because it's strictly just like, let's get a manga started, which is like 30% of it, and then 70% of it is just like the romance with Oski.
Oh, we're on the same frequency.
Yeah,
time stood still.
It's just not like good romance. Like, it's just not interesting. I really just don't care.
And even taking into account that they're, obviously inexperienced kids, it's still like so insane that it's just like, yeah, we don't know each other. Let's literally get married.
Yeah.
And also
so
not talk to each other, right? Yeah. And it's weird because at the start, like, their friends are like, you guys are crazy and this is weird and we don't like it, and which, rightfully so. But as the series goes on, they just accept it more and more to the point where they're willing to do crazy things to make sure that they like never see each other.
Right? Except for the time when he's in the hospital.
Okay, we're getting ahead of ourselves. Anyway, so yeah, once this once this whole arrangement is made, Takagi and Mashiro finally come up with their first manga, and this is where the story kind of gets a lot more interesting. I will be honest, if this series like came out today, I probably would have dropped it a couple chapters in.
Literally.
While I do think it gets more interesting, it takes a very long time. I think once they finally get to Shonen Jump and start submitting manga, this is where I think we can all agree that the strength of the series really starts to show itself. The whole creative process, and it's just really, really interesting stuff to see. Just seeing the inner workings of Shonen Jump, and obviously it's all exaggerated and not entirely realistic, but it's some good stuff. And,
if they had focused on the creating of the manga as the manga, this would have been like a fantastic manga. But they had
definitely, I agree.
They had to throw in. Well, actually, I'm gonna take that back a little bit because it was still hella sexist throughout the entire manga, so that would have dropped it down like 5 points out of 10 for me. But still, if we had, at least in some form, no romance, I feel like this would have been a much better manga.
Yeah, and we can get into it later, but like there are Like, the big problem I have with most of the series is that the manga stuff is usually really good, but it's always constantly interrupted by the romance stuff, right?
Yep.
There are parts, and they're the best parts of the series, where the romance is like very minimal and they just mainly focus on the manga, but constantly it's always just cutting away. Oh, I gotta text Izuki, I gotta text her, let her know how we're doing in the rankings, and she's like, oh, congratulations, and then they don't talk for another 6 months. And
Can I also add that, like, it just adds more to the dialogue. It never gets better. Like, the two of them, like, literally never have a good thing of dialogue through the entire series. It's awful. It is so bad.
Yeah, it's like...
Yeah, they keep saying the same things over and over, too.
Yeah, it's like how many times do they say, oh, we're on the same frequency? Like did they write this down thinking it was like some fire prose? Like, oh yeah, man, check this one out.
I think what they really did was they went to a middle school with a bunch of 13-year-olds and then asked them what their ideal relationship is, but the problem is they asked all the nerds who don't date, and...
Yeah.
So after, like, the introduction, you know, they get with everything with, like, Oski and, like, setting up that it's like we're not gonna talk to each other until our dreams come true. Then they finally end up, like, they finally, like, get into, like, the main conflict of the story, which is they want to push their new manga idea that they're coming up with into, like, the Treasure Award, which is like a one-shot, and so they're having to compete against this one guy who is like a manga prodigy, which is like one of the best characters of the series, Eiji Nizuma.
I think we can all agree that Nizuma is a banger character.
Dude, he is.
He's the best character, hands down.
At first, when I saw him, he first kind of really pissed me off, but then, like, after a long time no bleach, cracks me up every time I saw it. I know it's so stupid, but every time I saw it, I was like, that's funny, man. Like,
he's a very eccentric guy,
yeah.
And he's way more interesting than our main characters. But he's their main rival throughout the series, and the whole time they're trying to dethrone him because he's a Chad. And yeah,
Aiji should have been the main character of the series.
Yeah, I mean, to be fair, I mean, he does seem more like a supporting character, just the way his character is built up. But yeah, like, he is a really interesting guy, and he really stole the show every time he was in it. And unlike pretty much every other character, there was never really a moment where I got pissed off at him.
Now, I will say, when at the same time that we get to see Nizuma, we also get introduced to the best character in the whole series. No, Mr. Hattori.
Hell yeah,
dude, he's the best character. He's what a Chad,
I will say, okay,
dude.
We'll get to this. There is one thing Hattori does that I don't like, but overall, yes, Hattori is based and epic.
Dude, I freaking love Mr. Hattori.
He's their editor. He's always... Like, the best parts of this series were really when Hattori was just, like, putting Mashiro and Takagi in their place. Like, guys, this manga sucks. Here's what you gotta change. Watch a bunch of movies. And, yeah, it was great. When he gets replaced as their editor, it's...
That's where it goes downhill quick.
Hold on. We'll get to there.
I mean, we're almost there.
Well, so they have... one thing I also think is, like, one thing I will say about the series that's really cool is, like, all of these different ideas being, like, shot out as, like, all of these series that are running weekly. I thought that was cool. Like, in the physical volumes, you could, like, see that their popularity polls, specifically not just for the characters, but for the series that were, like, being made up by the fictional characters in here. I always thought that was really cool.
Like cheese crackers.
Yeah. Anyway,
there's a lot of weird ones, and I like how it sort of imitates real life. How, like, there's always these ideas, and, like, characters think they come up with this brilliant idea, and no one really likes it, and so they try again and they improve. I love that stuff about the series.
Yeah,
and I liked how even in the background, like, there were other mangaka who kept trying again, even if they weren't really a focus. It's some cool stuff. And anyway, eventually Mashiro and Takagi, after winning a few awards and whatever the fuck they were doing. That they made that stupid series. The world is all about money and intelligence.
Yeah.
I feel like if that were real, I would hate it.
The world is all about death. End note.
Yeah, but anyway, eventually they score their own series with Detective Trap. While they're still in high school, it was a bit controversial, but Eiji Nizumo was doing it, so they decided to let these guys do it. It proved to be a very bad idea, as Mashiro has a heart attack and is dying.
Well, it's not a heart attack.
You know what I mean.
He has some liver problem, and then they're like, "Oh, you have to be hospitalized." So the big conflict so the main conflict in that part is Mashiro's hospitalized, and the editor in chief is like, "You guys can't write the Detective Trap, or Mashiro can't draw while in the hospital." Because that'll be bad for him, and it's our job to make sure that the editors just don't die. Which they're really nervous, because I don't know if we mentioned this, but for the people who haven't read Bakuman, you gotta know is that Mashiro's uncle was this famous manga artist, not super famous, but he was another manga artist who died from overworking himself, and so they're really stressed out in this one, and this scenario they're really stressed out because they're oh my gosh, I don't want him to die, because he's in the hospital with a really slight issue, but then they're just all holy crap, what if he dies?
Well, so basically, medically speaking, I'm pretty sure it got to the point to where he was so dehydrated.
He needed to get an operation done.
Yeah.
Yeah, so he was so dehydrated that his kidneys, I think it was his kidneys, stopped working. And so he had to be hospitalized for that.
So for me, this was the first part of the series that, aside from maybe the start, but I absolutely hated this arc for a number of reasons.
Same. It was really bad.
I think now, for one, when it first started, I think this could have been really great, because overwork is a huge problem in the industry, as we know, and a lot of mangaka have died from it, or due to it or whatever. I mean Tezuka, recently Miura, all stuff that was probably related to overwork. So it's a huge problem, and it should be addressed, and it seems like this series was going to address it. But instead they decide that the best thing for Mashiro to do is to keep working. So even though Jump puts their series on hiatus, Takagi sneaks in his drawing stuff, and he just keeps working nonstop throughout his entire few months at the hospital. And
at the same time, Ozuki shows up. They break their agreement.
Yeah, so Azuki hears about this, and at first she's like, "Oh my god, Mashiro, you gotta stay in the hospital." And this was the first time I really wanted to drop kick Mashiro. He's like, "I'm sorry, Azuki, but manga is more important to me than you." Which, to be fair, makes sense because they barely know each other.
Based.
But that's such a bad thing to say to your girlfriend. My work is more important than,
I mean,
right?
at this, some of the comments he's made, it makes sense.
So then she just does a complete 180 out of nowhere and is like, you know what? Fine. I actually, it's your determination makes me more attracted to you, and I'm gonna stay here and watch you draw for the next month. So she does, and she guides his hand while he's dying.
Yeah. She's like, men overworking themselves is hot. I'm just gonna watch him work to death.
And then all the mangaka characters who we got to know at this point, they all get super upset, and they stage a walkout at Shonen Jump in order to convince them to get Mashiro's series back in. And it's what, he's dying in the hospital.
Okay,
bro,
he's actually not dying. They made it clear that it's not super dire.
Okay, well he could have.
Yeah, like
he could
make it
have
very
before the operation.
well. They make it very clear that it's like, hey, this like surgery that you're gonna get is like 99.9% or like 99%. It's gonna go fine. Like it wasn't very like drastic.
Yeah. But it's like it's such a like the editor-in-chief is in the right here. Like everything he does makes sense, but he's treated like the villain here, right? Like everyone hates him, and it's like, what do you? He's literally in high school. He's a child. It's
he was what,
like,
16
aren't
at this
there,
point?
child labor laws about those things too?
It's Japan.
Well, I don't know
Probably
about
not,
Japan,
I
but
know
yeah,
America's labor laws, but
yeah, I don't know. It was I don't, and to me, like
You wouldn't be in the hospital
like
if it was
yeah,
America.
and like what makes this so bad to me is that it really just the message of it almost seems like. If you're tired from overwork, fuck you, work more, and you'll be better.
yep.
Yeah,
Right?
pretty much.
Anyway, so I guess we'll get into our first comment from Hudson about the hospital arc here. This arc is amazing, and it shows what could happen to mangaka if they become overworked, which is unfortunately not too unlikely. I really like the interactions between Takagi and Mashiro in this arc, and it shows how far their partnership has come. And I really like the scene where Azuki holds the pen for Mashiro to help him draw.
Okay, to be fair, that was cute, but everything else
Okay, shut
is
up, no.
terrible.
No, it wasn't. Get
What?
that out. You know what?
That
That's
was-
it. Apologize.
that was
out of here.
disgusting.
That's
That
it.
was disgusting.
It is
Apologize.
disgusting. I can't believe I just said that.
Okay,
But anyway.
she literally says, I know you can do it, Mashiro. You don't need a break. I believe in
And
you.
then
no,
he's
like-
like, yeah.
Even though she was like crying over the fact that he's like, I'm sure you gotta take a break, and then like instantly, she's like, oh, never mind. Yeah, and like,
It doesn't matter if you die or not. Just draw manga
Yeah.
and you'll be fine.
and like Hudson said, like it is an interesting and good idea for an arc, but I just don't think they executed the idea well.
No,
Anyway.
no, they did not.
Mhm.
Anyway, we gotta get going because we're almost 30 minutes in already. What happens next? What happens after that shit?
Okay, so Detective Trap
Trap-
gets canceled. It gets the can
Yeah.
because he
Good.
got put in the hospital, and everybody's like, "What the frick? Why'd you cancel it?" And then, crap, what happens after that? Oh, yeah. So they had to come up with something. They come up with a gag manga. The gag manga.
Oh yeah, so
Which was
so Hattori got replaced by Miura, who is a clown. Who is I like most of the editors.
Oh, I
don't
hate
like
that
him.
arc so much.
I don't like
Miura
Miura.
is absolutely god awful.
Garbage.
Miura is obsessed with gag manga, and so he looks at Mashiro and Takagi, who are known for their more serious stories like Death Note, and and he wants them to do a gag manga, so he really pushes it to them. He makes Takagi read a bunch of gag shit and watch movies. Although it's not really him; it's mostly Miyoshi, who we haven't talked about. Miyoshi, their slave.
Oh yeah. Let's go ahead and talk about
Yeah,
her
wait, we
because
gotta mention
she's pretty
Miyoshi.
important. So like Miyoshi is Takagi's kind of girlfriend. I'm not really convinced because literally they start living together, but there's very few frames where they're ever in the same room at the same time. But unless they're doing manga shit, and when they're doing manga shit, she's inking and like doing background shit for them for no
free.
pay. I'm convinced
So
she does
it's-
not get paid.
And then,
Okay.
no, she literally tells them, and I quote, she's like, "I don't want you to pay me. I'm going to clean the house like a woman should." I'm not lying. Like there's a line of
Do
where
you have a
like,
screenshot of that?
I don't like there.
Damn.
Dude, there's a line where they like like talking about paying her, and then she's like, "No, I wouldn't do that to you."
No, what happens is I remember the scene. I think Mashiro goes to Takagi. He's like, "Hey, mate." He's like, "Maybe we should like pay her because she really does a lot." And he's like, "No, if we mention that to her, then she might." It's like she does it for free anyway. Don't even mention it to her.
Oh, so Takagi assumes she's stupid. All right.
Yeah, so, well, that's the thing, like, so their whole relationship, which, to be fair, they are more present in each other's lives than Mashiro and Azuki, but there's pretty much nothing between them that actually seems like Takagi loves her. Like, he always...
Yeah, he's pretty much only mean to her.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and a lot of times it is played as like a joke, and yeah, couples joke around and everything. But like a lot of the times it is like there's really nothing, like bro, and
Well,
like
so
it leads to definitely some of the worst parts of the series,
Yeah.
like the cheating arc, which
oh my god.
up here. So
I think that's like, I think we can talk about that now. I think that's like
Yeah.
just the well,
yeah, I think it's before PCP.
which
anyway.
also isn't like. Correct me if I'm wrong. Isn't PCP like a very dangerous drug?
Yeah.
Did that just
We'll-
like not stop them?
Yeah.
We'll put a pin in that for a minute because I have stuff to say on that. But yeah, so basically, oh god, I hate one of the things I found really annoying was how like everything had to connect back to like the start of the series. Like what is it? Miyoshi's dad just happens to be Mashiro's uncle's best friend. Azuki's mom just happens to be Mashiro's uncle's love. The like two important named characters from their middle school just happen to come back later. One of them being Awase, who has a crush on Takagi. Oh god.
I don't know if crush is the correct word. I think
Well, she,
obsession
like-
would be closer.
Yeah, she has like an obsession with Takagi, always wanting to beat him or whatever.
Kind of like how Shaman has an obsession with like Geki and Manga, but it's worse.
Yeah. Right, then there's this other female mangaka, Aoki. We haven't even talked about Nakai yet. Fuck, man, there's too much stuff in this series.
Who's the fat guy that like?
Nakai.
That's Nakai.
Yeah,
Okay,
so like, so there's this really big bulbous man who sits on a bench, which I haven't even got to the point to why he does this, but he sits on a bench for what 4 days, even in
No,
the rain.
no, stop. That's ahead of him. That we gotta explain like who he is.
Oh god.
Oh, okay,
oh,
yeah,
God.
yeah.
Nakai is one. Okay, so Nakai works as an assistant for Nazuma for a little bit, and so Mashiro meets Nakai, and Nakai is like he's been an assistant for a long time because he can't get like his spot as like an artist, so he teams up with Aoki. And he becomes the artist while she writes, and they make this one series. I don't know, it's like super forgettable, but he like falls in love with her.
Hideout
but he's
door.
like this like pitiful man. All right, he's like this a god awful man. And then he like the series gets canceled. They kind of like take a break from being partners or something, and then he's like obsessed with her. So what Apollo was saying was he literally goes out into the like the dead of winter, like in front of her apartment, and is like, I'm going to draw manga until you agree to like work with me again because I'm in love with you. And she's like, ew, no, stop. And then for some odd reason she like pities him, although he's done nothing except kind of harass her for like a long time.
And
So that-
stalk,
yeah.
and
Anyway.
berate, and everything else.
So yeah, we'll get back to Mr. Nakai, but to tie it back to the cheating arc. So yeah, so Aoki decides to write manga on her own, to do manga on her own and draw it. But she's not very good at drawing, and she also needs to come up with an idea for her new manga. So she starts having late night talks with Takagi, to the point where she starts to fall in love with him. And Takagi teaches her all about the art of panty shots. Oh God, fucking hell.
I forgot about that. I'm not gonna lie. I forgot about that.
So yeah, anyway, so this whole arc, and basically Miyoshi realizes that he's having these long talks, but he won't tell her who. And it all like culminates in this arc, which I thought was just a disaster because of like how easily avoidable everything was. Like Takagi's basically like, Miyoshi won't be able to handle it if she sees I'm talking to another woman for like 6 hours a day. So I'm just not going to tell
he,
her
like,
at all.
pulls all-nighters
Talk to
talking
her
to
for
her
yeah,
on the
5
phone
minutes.
So
instead of like spending time with his actual wife.
right? Like, there's no reason for him to keep this a secret at all. Also, this was before they were married, because that happens as a result
This
of this.
yeah, this is
But
the
they-
like the catalyst of their
Right?
their
But-
marriage.
But anyway, but eventually, so he goes to meet Aoki at the zoo or something, and like Iwase's there too, and then Miyoshi walks in on them, and she's like, "Oh, you whore," and then she runs away crying, and then Takagi's like, then for 2 whole months, they don't talk to each other because Takagi is waiting for her to apologize to him. But it's like,
see, that should have been a big enough red flag for her to
But
just
then-
not come back to him.
No, it gets better because while she's waiting for an apology, he's finally like, "Oh my gosh, meet me at the zoo. We can talk." When he gets there, Aoki's there, and I think it doesn't matter. Whatever matters is that Miyoshi shows up and she's like, "Oh my gosh, Takagi, you are a horrible human being. Why won't you just do the right thing?" And he's like, "Marry me." And she says yes. Why?
Yeah.
she immediately forgets about everything.
She's like, "Oh my
Bad
gosh,
he
are you
did.
serious? Yes, let's get married. Oh my gosh." And then
So Takagi is never punished for his bad behavior. And it's so like, dude.
well, hold on now, Gear. You
It
gotta
just
wait.
gets completely swept
they
under the
can't
rug.
officially let because while all this was going on, they ended their gag manga. While they ended their gag manga, what is the next thing that happened? So they were trying to push for another series, which was some series. I completely forgot which one they were trying to push for at this point. I think it was PCP. And they were like, if PCP gets serialized, then we can get married. But he's like, that's our deal. And so not only did he like not learn anything, he's like, this will actually only happen if I get a series, just so you know. And it's like,
And she's motivated. She'd be like, "Oh yeah, I'll help ink for you for free more." And yeah, like I'm convinced. Like Takagi seems like the kind of guy who like, and I've said this before, who doesn't eat pussy, right? Like he doesn't believe in the female orgasm. He'll like go home after a long days of work, do like a 2-minute like quickie with her, and then just and she won't come because
Go play Yu-Gi-Oh after.
he'll finish so quick, like she barely gets a chance to do anything, and then he'll just retire to his office, and she's just left alone.
oh,
right.
no, that's not true. One time he is like, I think they get physical one time. They mention that they make out, but
I
it
feel
never
like
shows
that's probably true.
anything. Although, aren't they like 20? Like when they get married, it's like really early or something.
They're
like
19,
that.
I think.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they get early. They get married like incredibly early. Like I think they're still in college.
And here's the thing: I've seen people say it's like, "Oh well, the series takes place over a long period of time." It's like we don't see every interaction with them, so they could love each other. It's like, yeah, but what we do see kind of shows that it feels like, I don't know. It's rough. I feel like, and I feel bad. I feel bad for Miyoshi because like Takagi was her only boyfriend ever, so she might think like this is the best it gets.
Also,
right?
like just to like reiterate, Takagi is probably like the biggest contender for like the most sexist character in the whole manga, because I'm pretty sure I rewatched Gear's video like right before this because I knew that he had some like specific quotes, and they were talking about how he's like a woman should act like this and like that, and it's like really bad. Like
Yeah, he
it's bonkers.
The context, he was talking about how like Iwase, because she's like more serious, like she's not an attractive woman or something, unlike Azuki, who's really graceful and polite, because she knows that it's her place to just get married and cook and clean. God. And it's I still can't get over all this stuff, and it's just like a huge problem with the series.
And then no characters call him out.
Yeah, like that's the thing.
And
it would be completely different if he faced consequences for his actions, right? Because that's what you would expect to happen, right? But just the fact that he isn't. Anyway, from Hudson again for about the cheating arc. He says, "While I acknowledge that this arc is kind of dumb, I have seen examples IRL that would suggest otherwise, especially people in their teen years."
That
Okay.
Does he give examples?
I feel like if this did happen in real life, like 99% of people would break it off.
What?
And,
But like the thing is like he acknowledges that it is dumb, but the thing is that if this happened in real life, we'd be saying the same exact thing. That the people are
if
stupid.
this exact scenario played out in real life, it would be like, holy shit, you guys are dumb.
Like, the fact that these are fictional characters, like, that somebody made up and he's like, oh my god. Like, he had time to come up with this type of, like, romance and it still flopped this hard. If this would have happened in real life, that's even worse. Like,
Yeah. Anyway.
I think before we go any further, we should probably mention at this point in the series, which they're
halfway through about.
Yeah, which is about halfway. There's a lot of characters that they've introduced, and a lot of them are like the fellow manga artists that they deal with and that they meet and talk to. Which my personal favorite is also one of the best characters in the entire series is Hiramaru, who is the author for Otter number 8, and my gosh,
number 11,
11. Yeah, why did I say that?
Fake
sorry,
fan.
sorry.
Number 11.
Regardless, this is the only.
Otter
He's the
11.
only thing in the entire series that I laughed at every time he was on the screen.
Oh, yeah.
Him and his editor.
He's a riot.
He's the best.
he's so
like
good.
Like his whole thing is great. Like he's in love with Aoki, right? The other mangaka, and his whole thing. But he hates working. So what his editor does is he always coerces him, like, hey, if you make chapters for the next 2 months, I'll arrange a phone call for Aoki. Right? Yeah, it's so funny.
And then he always falls for it regardless. But like he gets smart to it and like admits on screen that now you're just gonna make me do this and do this and
He's
this.
like, really?
The editor keeps one upping himself, right? He's like, oh, but this time we'll schedule a tea party with Aoki.
But it gets so funny. It's just really funny how hard he tries to get out of work, but then he just like starts spending a lot of money. Like I remember that he just pulls up one day. He's like, "What's up, guys?" And he's got like a convertible that he's driving around, like a Porsche.
Yeah. Wait, isn't that the chapter where he actually got Aoki to go?
No.
with him?
Yeah.
That was like before that. Like he had a car for a while, and then but then he like towards the end of the series, he actually ends up like going on a date with Aoki, but like. The day that like he goes out to tea with her and like to confess his feelings is like the best thing ever. It's
so
like
good,
everyone's
yeah.
cheering him on, and the funniest thing is that like his editor is like his dad. Like his editor will follow him around and be like, "Listen, man, you got this." Like he's like giving him like pep talks and stuff, and it's so funny.
Well, it's funny because I'm pretty sure at the start, like the editor didn't want them together because then he wouldn't have any more stuff to brag him.
Oh, he wanted him to be depressed.
Yeah, it's like no.
Right.
Oh yeah, because he's like, oh no, if he's happy all the time, I won't be able to get him to draw. But yeah, that whole thing is great, and I do have a problem with something he does later. But first, I think we can talk about the creation of PCP, which honestly, this is probably the first part in the series that I really enjoyed, like all the way through, because there was barely any romance
The
stuff.
Breaking Bad art.
And the way they like come up with the ideas, and like you really get into the creation of the series. You feel like you know it super well.
Yeah, that was definitely my favorite art.
Yeah.
Yeah, Perfect Crime Party.
Well, the
was
thing
Yeah.
is like with a lot of the other series, like it's all about Money and Intelligence and Detective Trap, and like even their gag manga. It's like you never really saw them like kind of form.
Yeah.
And then like they were really this time around because the entire thing. I don't know if this was like even intentional. Like the way that the entire like gag manga arc was written. To me, it really felt like that they were trying to write something bad for them, and then they were like, hey, we need to make something that's not mainstream. But when they get that idea, like the entire development is really like super cool. Which like, mind you, all the development of like the manga I really like enjoyed. Even up to this point, like I thought it was really, really good. But this is again, like everybody else is talking about, it is like super good to see like them kind of form all these different ideas and like find something that's really gonna like stick for their style.
Yeah. But yeah, okay, about the name, what the like
Why?
Yeah.
So PCP, of course, a very dangerous hallucinogenic. I don't know. It's just Japan is so strict with drugs. I guess, like, obviously it's not called PCP in Japanese, but I feel like still, even that would be like they wouldn't release a manga called Cocaine, right?
You don't know that.
Fair enough. But yeah, it was just a really funny detail. It doesn't really affect the story at all, but it's just every time they talk about PCP, all I could think about was the drug. I'm like, bro, this is ridiculous. But yeah.
I just keep thinking about, like, Jesse, we need to make a perfect crime. Mr. Hawaii.
Anyway.
So they end up getting serialized, and then that's what pushes Miyoshi and Takagi to get married. Wow, guys, they did it! Aren't you so happy?
Wow.
So now,
so
yeah,
romantic.
they're happily married, but then the dog arc happens, and I'll be real with you.
Best art.
It's so funny, like, I talk about this and people who don't have context are like, what the fuck? And there's actually someone who commented, was like, I read this series 2 months ago and I do not remember a dog arc. What are you talking about? So, but there's like this young mangaka character who gets introduced, and he has like 10 dogs, and Takagi writes a series with him, and it's just like I hate it. It's so
Yeah,
bad.
it's about a dog who can, like, lick people and make them tell the
So,
truth.
like,
No,
Yeah.
And,
so
like,
it's
smell
one of
people
the
and,
one
like,
of
know
their
if they're lying or
assistants. I think his name is Shiratori. I think. He which I thought he was a nice character. I actually did like him. And he like had this like idea, and Mashiro and Takagi were like, "Hey man, you should go for it." Like, but Takagi helped him write it. So without telling Mashiro, or Miyoshi, he took advantage of him writing this series. He took advantage of like getting the series off the ground to like improve his writing skills, and like avoided his wife and Mashiro for like 3 months, and so he worked with this one guy, and he didn't tell them, and he was trying to like secretly train Shiratori to become like a good writer, and
he gets mad at them too. Like there was a moment where like Miyoshi tries to talk to him at home, and he like gets mad at her, like yells at her, locks himself away in his office, and then she's like crying about it, and she's like talking to Mashiro and Izuki about it, and they're like, "What are we gonna do? What's wrong with Takagi?" Right? Anyway, then it all ends. The kid gets his manga serialized, and Takagi comes back. He's like, "Yep, that was me. I was just doing a little training exercise, and now I'm back full force."
Yeah.
And they're like, "Oh, Takagi, we never should have doubted you." Ah, ha, ha. And that's it.
It always pisses me off how Takagi always got away with everything he did.
It's ridiculous. The stuff he does is horrible.
Yeah, like if somebody did that in real life to someone else, there would be really big consequences.
What Hudson says about the dog
entire
arc.
relationships would shatter.
the dog arc.
So Hudson says the dog arc is actually his least favorite arc of the series. Because, and he brings up a good point here.
Not a good sign.
So the dog kid really never becomes relevant ever again. His series just gets canceled after 10 chapters, and then I don't know if he ever says anything else in the rest of the series.
No, he doesn't, because I was actually like really bummed out, because in the final volume I'm like, oh, I feel like that one of their other assistants becomes like, has a manga going on as well, and so I thought that they would all kind of talk or something, or like at least like acknowledge each other, because it's like their assistants are like, hey, you guys like Mashiro and Takagi, you guys kind of helped us out a lot, but they just give them the shaft. They like never show them again, and that kind of bummed me out.
Which, to be fair, like a lot of the people that I really enjoyed show up a little bit here and there, and then they're like shafted again. So
yeah,
I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
Like the whole manga of Bakuman, it's just terrible manga. Don't read it.
Oh, the kid that wrote the attorney manga, it felt so shoehorned when he was introduced. I knew immediately that he was gonna like go off and do his own manga, because it just felt so fake and
Speaking
robotic.
of their assistants, we forgot to talk about the cougar chick who was like, hey, Mashiro Sensei is into me, and it's like he's in high school and you're 8 years older than him. She's like, yeah.
And she's
Yeah.
like,
She's
oh,
like
no
30.
problem. And like nobody mentions it, but like the biggest
And when
problem.
like, and the dog kid, when she like comes on as their assistant again, she's like, hey, I heard the dog kid was here, and it's like, oh no, he got his own series, and she's like, oh, too bad.
So while all this is going on, because like PCP lasts for like basically from like I don't know, probably like towards like.
It was several volumes.
I mean, it was several volumes in, but like it lasted for probably the longest in the entire series, like of Bakuman, and so we got to see it basically like presently happening the most. But while all that's going on, while PCP is like going on, two kind of big things happen. The biggest thing is that for starters, Mr. Nakai like runs away. And then he's like, I don't want to draw manga anymore because I was embarrassed in front of everyone. And so he comes back to work with this one guy, which we'll get to in a minute. But he basically talks about, like, he gets really upset how his, like, career is ruined because of Aoki. And so he sits out in front of her apartment again, and he's like, I will not feel better until I beat the living daylights out of you, until I beat this woman to death. And everybody, and then, no joke, the next volume, everything's fine. They never mention it again.
So this was the one part that, like, made me not respect Hiromaru as much, because at this point, he's dating Aoki. And, like, Nakai's coming for her. It's like, oh, Lord, he coming. And Hiromaru goes out to, like, fight him like a Chad. And he's like, listen, man, you're not touching her. And he's like, I'm going to beat the shit out of her. Get out of here, right? And I'm like, all right, Hiromaru's going to throw down. But instead, Nakai's just like, oh, man, I'm just a sad, pathetic man. I can't get any girls. And then Hiromaru's right, like, you know what, man? Become my assistant. And then everyone's like, wonderful to have Nakai back.
So Nakai basically explains what being an incel is, and then Hiromaru's like, oh, that's
and
me!
And Aoki, who, like, the reason he ran away in the first place is because he was like, you have to date me, or I won't draw your manga or something, right? And then she slaps him. And she's just cool with everything. She's like, oh, those are my boys. The boys will be boys.
Oh, and she's like, if you have to...
So, like, Nakai gives me rapey vibes.
Oh yeah, well he goes after he goes after the cougar lady too, and she rejects him because she only dates guys who are younger than her.
So
yeah, no, she's a pedophile.
Well, so the big thing is that like and this is part of I guess that like I really liked. It was a character. This is kind of leading into Nakai's downfall. This guy named Nanamine shows up, and he like gathers like a bunch of people and makes this one manga that does really, really well. And then everyone figures out about it, and they're like, "Wait, you're using like 50 people to write one manga? That's like kind of really cheap." And I honestly thought that it was like a very interesting manga that they gave, but then like they were like, with that many. It's like the big thing with like too many cooks in the kitchen. It just didn't work out for him. So
Nanamine, he's like the poor man's Light Yagami. Like he thinks he's doing something super clever, but it's like actually really dumb.
Yes, that's
he thinks he's like invented this brand new idea that like getting 50 people to come up with a manga, but it's like literally everyone knows that the more writers you have, it's usually worse, right? So
yeah, he basically just has a Discord server.
They basically just came up with like basically just came up with like banger premises that like fizzled out super quickly, right? And so like you just see him go like absolutely insane as like his manga fails every week and more people leave him. And I love how like when he first
kind of like Yagami.
I love how when he first meets Mashiro and Takagi and he's like all happy, and then like Hattori leaves and he just like turns evil. He's like, oh. It's like, oh God, those editors don't know shit. And then, but like his editor is like this like wholesome guy who's like, oh, I believe in him. He can do good. There's good in him. I sense it. Like, shut the fuck up.
Isn't his editor the editor that transferred with PCP when it finally went over?
No, his editor is like a new guy. He's like a rookie editor.
Which,
Yeah.
which I will say, he does this twice. He literally attempts to do this twice, and then he hires Nakai back on to like be the lead artist.
Okay, we need to. Okay, so like the first villain arc was weird enough, but the second time Nanamine comes back is the most like baffling part of the series. He basically goes to his dad. He's like, "Dad, can I have $10 million?" And he builds this facility and hires like 100 kids to just sit around and create manga, and they like get trained, and they like pump out this like corporate manga, and the exact same thing happens again.
Yeah, and then it just doesn't
they have
work.
like the library with like the security cameras.
No, but how they started, it's like a twist after how they started. They basically hire veteran mangaka to submit the series as their work, and so they make the series called Panty Fights, which is a masterpiece according to every character who read it.
It's great.
It was so funny when
This is the best manga I've ever seen.
Literally, it like shows every editor reading Panty Fights, and they're like, "Wow, now this is manga."
And they're like freaking out about him. Like
Yeah.
they are like, this is what non-mainstream battle manga is. And they're like freaking out.
Oh,
Now this is
speaking
manga.
speaking of wild manga that was considered a masterpiece, what was that manga about, like the music that came alive?
Yeah.
You
It
guys
just
remember that?
fell off
That
the
was
face.
way earlier in the
Yeah,
series.
that
was,
fucking
was-
fell off.
No, I know,
Oh,
I
yeah.
know. Like we saw it like 3 times and it
Basically,
disappeared.
that was Kugi. He was like a musician who he was also kind of a villain. Like he only gets serialized because he gets all of his fans to vote for him. But it was just some weird abstract music shit that no one liked. But yeah, it's
so-
fine.
That's what
Okay.
PPPPs were
So
based off of?
basically, I think this kind of leads on to the end of the series where they're like, they want to make.
Hold on. We are forgetting, which is my personal favorite part of the series, which is when Nizuma ends Crow.
Yeah, I was just about to say that.
Oh, that's what you were getting at. I think you were
Yeah.
talking about something like that.
No,
Yeah.
so that's like the next like big step. Like they
Yeah.
try. I'll let you handle
So-
that one.
Yeah, so Crow is Nizuma's manga that's been running for most of the series. It's a nice, fun, battle manga that actually looks sick as fuck, and I would love Crow to have been the real manga instead of Bakuman.
But whatever.
But basically,
I wish it was
basically,
real.
and this to me was like one of the most cleverest things about the series. When it first starts, Nizuma is like, I'll work for you guys. They really want him. He's a prodigy. He's like, but you have to promise me if I become the #1 manga, I get to choose any series I want to end, right? And then everyone just forgets about this. And then you have years later, and he says he's going to do it again. And people are getting nervous because, like, oh shit, what if he actually ends something that he doesn't like? But what he actually wanted to do is use it so he could end his own series when he was finally done with it, because they didn't want to let him end Crow because it was so popular. But he's like, listen, right? So he brings it up, and they're like, all right, man, we'll tell you what. We'll let you end Crow if it gets #1 10 weeks in a row. And then he fucking does it. And it was Chad.
Yeah,
It
and
was...
like immediately too.
Yeah.
He was like,
That was-
okay,
that was
then.
Everybody,
really cool
and it's
moment.
such a great arc because there's no romance bullshit. It's just all of the manga characters coming together, and they're each trying to beat him.
yeah, and I mean like it's nice to see them like all compete.
And and they're all doing crazy things with their story, and everyone is doing great, but they still can't beat him. And then when it ends, he just like, "Fuck you guys, I'm out," and it was fucking great.
Yeah.
And I really
Yeah,
wish
that was really cool.
I really
actually.
wish that was like the end of his character. It obviously wasn't, but like I think that was like the perfect note to go out on. Like, wow,
Yeah.
man.
Now,
Great.
think about this. Imagine if the whole manga was just stuff like this. Like if it was a
Yeah.
quote-unquote battle manga, but this.
Oh my god, man!
Yeah.
Like this whole part was only like
it would have been so
this part
good.
was like less than 10 chapters, but it was so good. Like, man,
Well,
real missed opportunity.
well, because you have like Fukuda and Aoki and Takagi Mashiro and Iwase like just trying to push stuff, and Takahama had like his like attorney one.
Yeah, that was
shooting for
doing
it and
well, too,
everything.
yeah.
So that's like the big like final piece of the puzzle before Mashiro and Takagi are like, okay, we need to really make a non-mainstream battle manga. So,
because of course their whole goal was to get the series animated so Izuki could voice it and all that shit. But
PCP couldn't get animated, so they were like, okay, we got to try it again.
Yeah. Well, so it did get a drama CD which she voiced, but that didn't quote unquote count.
Yeah, that didn't count.
Also, we may not have mentioned this, but the entire dream was that Asuki was going to be the female voice actress in Mashiro and Takagi's anime.
because this whole time she's trying to make it as a voice actor, but her character is so painfully nothing that who cares?
Yep, like she has no personality.
Anyway, so there's a lot of controversy in PCP with kids trying to replicate the crimes that they commit.
No, there were like bank robberies, and people were saying blame PCP, and then it's like, what? Like people were robbing banks? What?
Anyway, so they can't get it animated.
Yeah,
so
PCP
shit
was here.
What do we do?
Yeah, they weren't robbing banks. People were just putting notes in there saying it was PCP, and then they're like, "Oh my gosh!" And then there's like a story arc with Takagi being like, "Oh no, guys! Like I'm having writer's block."
Takagi gets depressed, and the manga gets bad because he does it's the PCP Fullbring arc basically.
No, come on.
And but then they save it and whatever. But yeah, the problem now, they can't get an anime, so they have to come up with their best manga yet. And it honestly sounds like their worst manga yet. It looks like a mix between Death Note and Platinum End in all the worst ways, and I do not believe that it would have been that popular.
Apparently, it was the most popular series in Shonen Jump.
Yeah, so...
Also, just to point this out, because it did get animated, but if I remember correctly, it ended pretty quickly. Like, it didn't last very long.
That was the thing.
Was still
it
going.
was a really short manga. Basically, this whole thing, it started with
volumes or something.
So AG had his huge goodbye thing, which I loved, but they had to bring him back because their whole rivalry was they wanted to beat AG, and they still hadn't done that. So AG comes up with the Zombie Gun, another banger series, which looked awesome, and so Mashiro and Takagi make this new series, Reversey, and they basically just have another whole rivalry thing. Not as good as the last one because there's some romance bullshit in here, but
Yep.
But yeah, oh my god, remember that scene how Azuki turns down a huge heroin roll because it wasn't Mashiro's?
Yeah.
God, this fucking... Oh god, and she oh my god, guys, we're at an hour now. There's so much shit, I just...
We haven't... Okay, for anyone that hasn't read it and is not following, there is so much to go over that we haven't even touched half of it.
I just remembered the whole thing where... Nizuma is inspired by the romance, and they all make their own romance manga, and Mashiro,
and it's all awful.
Mashiro, it's so funny. Mashiro makes a manga based on his own romance, and it flops.
Yep.
God. Anyway.
So to wrap it up, okay, this to me wasn't the worst, but it definitely was really confusing. So Reversey needed to get an anime, but then somehow somebody leaks online. It was their old classmate. They leaked online that the people that are behind the Mashiro and Takagi, that actually Mashiro and Asuki are dating. And so they're oh my gosh, they're just going to try to put her in the role. And apparently it's really bad for a voice actress to have a boyfriend. And so
because
she
all the incels go insane.
Yeah, and so they start freaking out, and they're hey, we're going to have this competition to see which one of these fine young ladies will be the voice of the heroine in Reversey, and then guess what? She ends up getting it, and then they're finally oh my gosh, okay, on that day when you hear my voice on the television of me being in the anime, that's when I'll meet you. And then Mashiro buys her old house, and then they never kiss. No, they kiss once. And then guess what? They're gonna get married.
I think on the final.
And
chapter.
They
have this whole American Idol production.
This whole I just really couldn't stand this whole ending because it was all about the romance and stuff, and pretty much all the manga stuff had already been decided. It was just about this stupid internet incel drama. Good lord, man.
Yeah, it's just, and then it ends, and I literally was all
yeah.
That's it? Like, I literally
Yeah,
read the last page and I was like, is that it? For real?
Also, I will say another part near the end I did like was when the editor-in-chief left, but it wasn't because it was just really cool. He's like, oh yeah, man, 20 years, and everyone's like, yeah, you go, chief. Although I feel like it wasn't really as impactful because he just moves to an office next door and they still talk to him. Like, I think it would have been better if he just, like, straight up retired, but he just moves next door and they still like, hey man, how's it going? We need to ask for advice.
So Reversey is like this manga about these two thirst trap vampire guys that have like the same powers and they're fighting, okay? And then they realize, like, after they start it, they're like, wait a minute, this is boring as frick. And then they they realize there's gonna be no conflict if there's only two people with powers and they have the same powers and they're having the same fights every time. So instead of explaining how they make it interesting, they're just like, let's make it interesting now, and then there's this time skip to the ending. They don't make it interesting. They don't even show how it would work. It just does.
They just, and in the end, the series ends with the two of them just falling and just like face planting.
Yeah, so like,
just like
and everybody is sitting there like, dude, this is great. Like, people are freaking out over this ending.
That's the thing.
Yeah.
Like, Perfect Crime Party, they go into such detail about it that you actually are convinced that it's a great manga, right? But with Reversey, like, they're so vague about stuff that you really can't get a feel for it.
I really feel like Reversey was rushed in the manga for the manga because of something else. Like, towards the end, I feel like Bakuman probably wasn't doing very well, and so they just rushed the ending.
That's pretty meta.
I don't know.
But yeah, like, man, there's just...
So
I guess...
there's
what were
only
you
so
gonna
much
say?
we can talk about, but I think that the last thing about Hiramaru is that he ends up asking
Oh,
Oki
right.
to marry him, and they get married.
Here's the thing.
They do get
While I
married.
do...
That's actually a relationship that I was rooting for.
Well, here's...
That was the only relationship I
Right.
liked.
Well, here's my problem with it. Like, it's not much of a relationship. Like, I am happy for them. I didn't hate those characters. I mean, I like Hiramaru a lot. But, like, basically, like, he starts dating her, and the whole Nakai shit happens. But then 2 years later, it's revealed that even though they've been technically dating, all they've been doing is having tea parties. And literally nothing else. So...
Oh shit, I forgot about that.
So then he proposes to her on the Ferris wheel, and it's this big moment, but it doesn't really feel like they were really together for that long.
Wait, isn't that the chapter where he lost the ring?
Yeah, on the Ferris wheel,
Yeah.
homie.
Yeah.
So like, while I am happy for them, I don't know. I wasn't really into that.
Yeah,
either.
I was sitting there and I'm like, I guess this is cool. Like, it's good that it happened, but it's also like, I don't know. Like, is it supposed to happen like this?
I forgot. We actually forgot to go back to Hudson. Oops. So
Do we even really care about Hudson?
yes, we do. Listen. Bakuman's a very popular series. A lot of people love it. Hudson is our voice into the Bakuman, the mind of a Bakuman fan, right?
Well, Hudson, listen, bud. I'm so sorry that you have incel powers.
Okay, so about the Nakai arc, he said, during my first read-through, I felt sorry for Nakai, but on my second read-through, he was really creepy. Although I do like the scene where Ko Aoki covers him with the umbrella. One of my favorite moments is where she bitch slaps him across the face. She's definitely my favorite character.
Oh yeah, I forgot about that. Nakai's like, yeah. He's like, I'll work for you. He's like, only if you like date me. And then she like slaps the crap out of him.
We mentioned that, yeah, but
But like on top of everything we've talked about, there's so much more to talk about. Like Iwase, we didn't really get to talk much about her. She was like a big thing for like 3 volumes, maybe not even that.
she's
and then
not.
there was
She makes that Pokemon ripoff with Nizuma.
yeah.
I love.
Yeah, we never even talked about Fukuda.
Oh God, no! I gotta say this about Iwase. I love how she like gets introduced as she's like, manga is low tier art, right? And then
wasn't she
and
like a literary professor or like a literary
so
student?
she's like right. She's like super into. She's like manga is low tier art, but then she decides to do it anyway to beat Takagi.
Continues to
and then
make
she's
a
like,
manga.
but she's like, I'm gonna make a manga that changes the game and will be high tier art, and it's literally just a Pokemon ripoff.
Yeah. Actually, wait. Didn't she make manga because just like Aoki, she was obsessed? Well, not just because of Aoki, but like, didn't she make manga because she was obsessed with Takagi?
Yeah.
Yeah, pretty
Yeah.
much.
Yeah. So like, we have 3 different women who are obsessed with Takagi, and why?
That's and she also like falls in love with Tori at one point.
Oh yeah,
Hattori?
Yeah,
I didn't know
Hattori.
that. I forgot about that.
So I guess looking back,
That's
at
why
all,
the switch happens. That's why Miura and Hattori swap, because Hattori's like, yeah, I'm being hit on by the artist, help me. And then everybody's like, okay. And then everybody's like, oh, that's so sad that they're swapping. And then it turns out Mashiro and Takagi are like, yeah, frick Mr. Miura, we want Hattori back.
But yeah, at the end of the day, when you look at all the female characters, pretty much all of them are used as love interests, and whenever any of them are successful, it's because a man helped, basically. Like Ko Aoki, she eventually like pops off with her own manga, but it's all because of the tips Takagi gave her about drawing panties and stuff, right?
So the meaningful lesson of the story that I think Tsugumi Oba and Takashi Obata want to get across to everyone
Oh no.
is that women are nothing without men, and apparently that's their only lesson for the entire
Stop the
manga.
bit. Stop the bit. Stop the bit.
All right, so I guess. Oh yeah, well, we're still reading Hudson. Okay, we'll read Hudson, then we'll give our final thoughts. So for the villain arcs, he said that yeah, kind of stupid overall.
That's it?
Well,
That's
he
it?
compares him to Light Yagami and stuff, but yeah, his thoughts are it's kind
I
of
mean,
like
Naname or whatever the fuck his name was is basically Light Yagami with red hair.
listen, Hudson, I respect your opinion and all, but you should call this the greatest manga of all time, and like half of these are you agreeing that parts are dumb. So
Yeah.
anyway, and then
I don't know. It sounds like the greatest manga of all time to me.
Here were his thoughts on the relationships, just in general. He thought, although Azuki and Mashiro's relationship conceptually has a lot of problems, I still like it overall. Okay, Takagi and Miyoshi, in hindsight, felt kind of forced. Aoki and Hiromaru, while not being very developed, they feature 2 of my favorite scenes in the manga, where he asks her out and when he proposes. Azuki, even though I think Azuki is a bit of a wooden board character, I like all the scenes involving the voice acting industry. Thank you for the opportunity to let me review some of the parts for you and your fellow co-hosts. Also, if there's any time you need an extra person to hop on, I would join in a heartbeat.
All I'll say is this, Hudson. We very well appreciate your feedback, and we're very glad we have the opportunity to do this. Different strokes for different folks, but it's okay to have a wrong opinion.
It is interesting, though, because, like, Bakuman is a very popular series. I mean, looking back at it now, there are parts that I have no idea how I was okay with, but, like, I guess a lot of people just are. It's weird, man.
I don't know. Like, to be fair, when I first started reading it, which Bakuman came out when I was still in high school, and this was over 10 years ago.
Old.
Go shove a carrot up your ass. So when I was still in high school, I thought Bakuman was like the shit. Like, this was the best manga ever written. And do you know why? Because I was a virgin fuckboy, bullshit cunt. That's what I was. I had no idea. Yeah, exactly. Like, I had no idea what women were. I knew what a girl was. No idea what a woman was.
I think
so. Like, I was just like, this is how relationships work. They're so smart.
That is like that is like seriously something that it could be, because like when I first read it, I so I guess now it's years later, I just have like a different perspective on certain things.
Well, yeah, because you've experienced relationships, I hope.
Yeah.
Gear's gonna get canceled for his old opinions on Bakuman.
Dude, let's
But
bring
aren't
it
you,
back
like,
up.
14?
Let's bring it up.
So I guess just to wrap it up, I guess we'll go over people's final thoughts and their final score. So I guess
Oh, God.
Apollo, what do you got?
So, Bakuman is just, in general, in my opinion, a really terrible manga. Um, the PCP arc and a couple of the arcs where Crow was like the main part for like 4 or 5 chapters every now and then were really good. So for those and those areas alone, I'll give the manga a solid 4 out of 10.
All right, Buzz.
I don't know. This manga has some high points, mostly low points. Honestly, the stuff with a lot of the side characters for the mangakas, their mangas and the way that they showed manga creation, was really cool. The way that they like showed them drawing, the way they showed them using screen tones and all this stuff. It was very realistic.
That part of it, yeah.
And it was really interesting, at least to me, since I've always been kind of a nerd for comics and like comic creation. Yeah. And so, it was fun to see those things. But at the same time, it wasn't a very good manga, I'm going to be honest. The manga creation aspect can only save it so much. And honestly, I probably would say it's like a 6 out of 10.
All right. And Shrug?
So I've never seen a series that I've had like that I've loved like one part of it and then like totally like despised and like wanted to stop reading another part of it.
And it's like not consistent. Like you get whiplash from the quality.
Yeah, it's like tonal whiplash because while it doesn't take itself too seriously, when it's trying to like portray this very serious romance story and like this one plot, it's not good romance no matter what the situation is. It's not like, while it is like unique, it's not good. And I do think that a lot of the manga creation is pretty cool. And I do like that. Some of it can be boring. Like, it's really frustrating there in the middle with the entire gag manga and Mr. Miura. And I just did not understand why it was the way that it was. But then there's like towards the end there with everything with PCP and even like Reversi at some points, I was like, and with Trap, some of it was good, but I can't like say that it was all good. So I'm gonna give it a 6. 6 or 5, depending on the day.
Yeah. So I'm kind of
depending on
I'm kind of in the same boat. I mean, like most of us pretty much all agree that like the manga creation stuff is super good and interesting most of the time. But there's just other elements of the series that bring it down so much. Like this could have been like a 10-volume series that only focused on manga. It would have been an absolute banger. But it's just there's so much bullshit in here pretty much, and it made me at the end I'm like, there was a lot of good stuff in there, but I don't really know if I'd recommend this to people. so yeah, I was stuck with a 5, and there we go. I did give it a 10 out of 10 though years ago, so if you're like like 15, you might like it more.
Yeah, 15 and a virgin.
Well, Apollo, I mean, people can't have sex until marriage.
You're right.
So,
you can't.
Yeah.
Because of me.
Yeah.
Wait, hold up. First of all, Shrug is a Mormon. We can't take his opinion.
This is true.
He's biased.
Amen.
Mormons don't Mormons like do this thing where they like shake the bag?
That's children.
What do you mean children? This is an R-rated podcast.
There are children that watch your podcast.
Well, there shouldn't be.
That's not our fault.
We got Smitty watching. Come on.
There's literally 14-year-olds in your Discord
That's
server.
not our fault.
Yeah, this is a public Discord server.
That's true. That's true. So like when they jump on the bed and then make
if there are ever minors who are like swearing in my Discord, I contact their parents.
Give them a slap on the wrist and give them a lollipop. Send them on the way.
Is that why I've been getting so many pictures of like parents' IDs to verify identity?
Shut the fuck up.
Anyways, all right, guys. Thank you so much for this episode of Manga Alert. Make sure that you purchase the new NFT collections, which are going to be in the that'll be on Gear's Twitter. He just announced
more people will watch the 50th episode than this one because this is just a niche one. So we'll do a more proper announcement about the NFTs there.
Yeah, but.
Get that NFT drip.
Also, read Bleach. It's fantastic.
Apollo's not coming back, guys. Just gonna be honest here. But thank you guys for listening, and I hope that we can see you guys in the next episode, the 50th episode of.
You gonna tell that to a cripple? How dare you? Huh?
Bye,
Bye,
everyone.
everyone.
Women are nothing without men.